Blend, Part 2. Mr. Rosenberg recommends separating what we observe from our evaluation of what we observe. He points out that for most of us, it is difficult to make observations of people and their behavior that are free of judgment, criticism, or other forms of analysis. This is the ticket price to get into the game of communicating without being a victim of verbal abuse. Being able to simply acknowledge another person's position without making condemning remarks or holding a contemptuous attitude towards them is critical. It supports our ability to step off the line of attack, perform Tenkan, and guide our attacker to a satisfactory solution to the real issues underlying the attack. As we delve further into various forms of attacks, we will become effective when we develop the ability to enter the state of no mind, simply observe, then make a connection with what the attacker is feeling as a result of not having their needs met. Be observant of attackers who describe non-feelings using feel language. Some typical attacks and complaints that do not clearly express the speaker's true feelings might sound like these examples. Wife: I feel as if I'm living with a zombie. You never talk to me or tell me about what's going on with you. Living with a zombie is a non-feeling, and when the word feel is followed by words such as that, as if, like, and you, she is only describing how she thinks or her evaluation of the situation, not how she feels. Sister to her brother: I feel it is useless to talk to my boyfriend. He simply refuses to listen. More non-feeling language is evidenced when the word feel is followed by words such as I, you, he, she, they, and it. Employee: I feel my boss is being manipulative. He plays all of us against each other. Language referring to people or things indicates a lack of connection with the actual feelings and almost always indicates a judgment by the speaker. When you hear people using this type of language, make an effort to reflect back their lack of authentic expression by suggesting possible feelings for them to see if you can pinpoint their feelings and needs. Wife: I feel as if I'm living with a zombie. You never talk to me or tell me about what's going on with you. Husband: It sounds like you're feeling neglected and even a little mad because you're not getting enough attention from me. Do you want to have more time to talk on a regular basis? This stops the attack, which is subtle and masked as an accusation, dead in its tracks. Zombie pun fully intended. By neutralizing the attacker and allows for a real two-way conversation to begin. It beats the heck out of, you'd go into zombie mode too if you had to listen to yourself whining about your day and all the people who are out to get you. Husband will be in the doghouse again. Another typical attack pattern that Dr. Elgin exposes in The Gentle Art of Verbal Self-Defense is the classic, don't you even care about X? Where X can be any number of juicy fillers. Your grades, your health, your job, your children. As in this example, Doctor: Don't you even care about the harm your smoking is doing to the rest of your family, let alone to your own body? The word even is a major flag warning you that you are being attacked. It puts the final touches on the last of these three presuppositions that are wrapped up in this attack. Number one, you don't care about X. Number two, you should care about X and you're bad not to. And number three, therefore, you should feel very guilty about this. Performing Tenkan to blend with attacks of this type requires that we understand our attacker's true intent, which is to get us to shift our behaviors. The way we are behaving now is not acceptable to them. They really want to accept us, but they won't if we are unable to meet their conditions. Often these attacks are put forth by pyramid controllers or square analysts who are focused on accomplishing their own goals and can't understand why you won't take action on their recommendation. A patient who could remain observational might be able to blend by dealing with this attack as follows. Patient: Doctor, I get the sense that you're feeling concerned about my ability to overcome my addiction to smoking and perhaps a little sad that I'm possibly doing harm to my family. Are you willing to discuss this from the perspective that I do care about the people I love and that I do want your help? This response makes a clear request for a discussion free of presuppositions. The neutrality is clear, and either party can take the guiding role in the dialogue to follow. This is an attack pattern that is based on an unproved assumption that the patient doesn't care about his family. That assumption needs to be gently uncovered and a request made that if doctor and patient are to talk about this, it will be best done without that assumption driving the dialogue. In exposing the assumption without blame, most attackers regain their reasoning ability and will accommodate our request without continuing the attack. It must be done delicately and without a hint of blame or accusation in the response. Again, try to see things from the doctor's point of view. Recognize the shared principle, gaining control over an unhealthy addiction, and seek to find a neutral place from which to begin an open dialogue. The next attack pattern is far from subtle. It lands like a brick upside the head, and if the person being attacked takes the bait, the consequences are equally painful. Here's the structure for this attack. Even X should Y. An example would sound like this in an exchange between a college professor and a first-year student. Professor: Even someone your age should know that term papers have to be typed. Presuppositions are as follows. Number 1, whatever your age, there is something wrong with being that age. It's not an age to be proud of. Number 2, the fact that term papers have to be typed is so well known that for you not to know it is further proof of how inferior you are. And number 3, you should feel very guilty and ashamed. Naturally, there are several small words that can go between X and Y. These are words that, like even, pack a large amount of information into a very small space. Even X should Y. Even X ought to Y. Might, must, could, can, will, would. Even X may Y. And the filler for X and Y will sound pretty familiar. Even you, even a woman, a 7th grader, a plumber, someone your age, a high school dropout, should, or another small but powerful word, be able to understand how cars work, be able to understand the basic facts of life, appreciate the fact that money doesn't grow on trees, know that term papers have to be typed, be able to keep a job for longer than 2 months. A blend with this overt type of attack is fairly straightforward. Professor: Even someone your age should know that term papers have to be typed. Student: You seem upset and discouraged. Is that because you needed me to meet your expectations about the quality of my term paper? Professor: Yes, I was, and I am discouraged with you. Student: I apologize for this. May I request that we talk about what my options are at this point? Though it is a straightforward blend, there are some technical details that should be pointed out. First of all, this response includes a small portion of the guide step. This is so you can begin to see where and how to guide an attacker once the neutral step has been achieved. In this sample conversation, student was able to provide professor solid evidence that he was seeing the situation from the professor's point of view. As soon as it was clear that professor was neutral, as evidenced by his agreement with student's assessment of his feelings and the needs that were driving those feelings, student could begin to guide. At this point, without denying the professor, student has indeed earned the right to make a request for a solutions-oriented discussion and begin the process of guiding professor to have a conversation about options. The apology keeps professor's ego intact. Professor needed to have his importance confirmed and likely wants to make sure student was clear in his own goal of having only typed term papers to make the task of reading all of them much easier. Student will do well to confirm to professor that he understands this rule and will do his utmost to be aware of and fulfill professor's expectations. Avoiding the entire presupposition around the being old enough to know better or being incompetent for his age, student was able to quickly return professor to having a dialogue instead of following the usual pattern of this attack. Typical student responses to this type of attack are to make excuses as to why the paper wasn't typed, to justify the paper as submitted, or make ridiculous claims about being ignorant of the standards for term papers, all of which might inspire the professor to gain a feeling of importance by chastising student. A more complex and vicious attack pattern that we have all encountered at some point is this. Everyone understands why you X. Here, X might be any number of claims such as, you are so emotional, are so confused, are so angry, really haven't been yourself lately, can't achieve your sales numbers, are having so much trouble adjusting to Y. As an example, commanding officer. Soldier, everyone in your unit understands why you are having so much trouble adjusting to your new duties. This is a particularly troublesome attack pattern because it is often delivered in a tone of kindness and often from people in authority or positions of power who appear to be trying to help us. Feelings of confusion, betrayal, and resentment are common, making it difficult to blend with this attack. Our instinct tells us to lash out and ask who in the unit is saying bad things about us or deny angrily that we are having any troubles adjusting, which only further corroborates the presuppositions. Equally foolish is an attempt to argue that you can adjust to the duties, make the sales numbers, and not be emotional or whatever is alleged in X that you can't do. This is exactly what the attacker is expecting to encounter as a response. This attack presupposes the following. 1, that there is something very wrong with you. 2, this something wrong is well known to everyone around you. 3, this something wrong is so wrong that we are all more than willing to forgive you for X. 4, you should be very, very grateful to all of us for being so perceptive and understanding. And 5, you should be very, very ashamed of yourself. This attack pattern is based on a tried and true fundamental mechanism that is tied in with cornerstone number 3, the cosmic joke. We all have something we view as our shameful little secret, and we would hate for anybody else to know about it. Anyone employing this attack pattern can count on you knowing what that secret is, even if they don't, and that you will likely react to a person in your situation or to everyone understands why you X with this thought, oh no, everybody knows about it. Don't fall for this. Your attacker most likely doesn't really know about it, and who cares if they do, we all have an it. And they are trying to goad you into a counterattack pattern that will unveil your weakness, enabling them to further control and abuse you. This is a tricky attack and should be dealt with very carefully. There are many pitfalls in responding to this while attempting to maintain your own integrity. Here is a possible response to this type of attack. Commanding officer. Soldier, everyone in your unit understands why you are having so much trouble adjusting to your new duties. Soldier, without blatant sarcasm. Sir, I appreciate that the unit has this much concern for me. Does this warrant a discussion with the entire group? I'm not sure what you would like to talk to me about. This is a tough response, especially considering the circumstances, but Soldier is in a precarious position in that commanding officer has him cornered, alone, and is making claims about the unit's alleged issue with Soldier. This is not a pure blend maneuver in that the intent of the commanding officer is not clear. In order to smoke out the real issue, instead of assuming that it is about it, this approach could produce the real concern. At the very least, it aligns with commanding officer's statement and reduces the effectiveness of the tactic by Soldier's willingness to discuss the issue with the rest of the unit present. The exchange might continue like this. Commanding officer. No, soldier, we don't need to bring the rest of the unit in on this. I just can't figure out why you aren't getting your duties accomplished to standard. Soldier. Sir, are you discouraged by the lack of enthusiasm for the duties I have been assigned? Commanding Officer. Very discouraged, and disappointed too. You have great potential and you're not showing me what you're made of. I think it's because you're homesick. At this point, neutrality has been achieved because Soldier got Commanding Officer to come clean on what he thought the problem was, giving Soldier the chance to confirm Commanding Officer's real feelings. Now Soldier has earned the right to make a request, such as this. Soldier. Sir, can you please tell me more about what exactly you are expecting of me and what your plans are for me? This example shows how critical it is to stay calm even during a vicious attack like this. By remaining open to the real needs that Commanding Officer had and wanting to find out what Commanding Officer was really requesting of Soldier, the chance to blend showed itself in 2 moves. Again, I would like to point out that the real reason for the attack was that Commanding Officer wanted to see a change in Soldier's behaviors. Knowing this is why people attack us will enable us to quickly discover what behaviors the attacker wants to see changed and attempt to understand why they want them changed. From that point, and only from that point, will there be any opening for discussing options and alternatives and explaining our own point of view with our attacker or partner. In a less charged scenario, the exchange may be even easier, resulting in a blend in only 1 move. Employer. Sue, everyone here understands why you are having so much trouble fitting into this environment. We really do understand. Sue. That's so perceptive of them, and I appreciate you mentioning it. Employer. Well, that's not really what I wanted to talk to you about. Sue. Oh, sorry. Nothing like a misunderstanding to start off a conversation. Why don't we start over? Again, this tactic enables Sue to smoke out the real issue that employer wants to discuss without creating any hostility and without taking any of the bait being offered in the attack pattern. By saying, nothing like a misunderstanding, there was no blame assigned for the misunderstanding, and neutrality was gained immediately. This is a language technique and will be very difficult to remember if you were attacked with this pattern. If you find yourself dealing with attacks of this nature, practice with a partner until you can do it with ease. Additionally, it may be that your internal dialogue and a habit of worrying about what others are thinking is showing up in your facial expressions, your body language, and vocal intonations. These are often the initial catalyst for people making this type of attack on you. This next explanation makes kids go, ew, but it's a fact. When we speak, our vocal cords make the air molecules around us vibrate. Those vibrations are picked up by the receiver's eardrums. When we speak, we are literally touching another person's eardrums with our vocal cords using air as the medium. How is your touch? Is it light and pleasant? Gruff and sarcastic? Straightforward and clear? Arrogant and self-righteous? Think of it as physical touch and ask yourself, would you enjoy being touched the way you sound? If your voice has a shove or a grab in it, people will feel attacked no matter what your message might be. Try recording yourself in regular conversation. Have a friend over and pick a few charged topics for discussion. Record for at least a half hour or so you can get past being self-conscious about the recording. Then play this back and confirm with your friend that the recording is an accurate reproduction of the way your voice sounds. If so, then objectively listen to yourself speaking. This might be a bit of a shock to you. We are often dismayed that we don't sound to others the way we think we sound. This is a surefire way to uncover vocal patterns and qualities that are annoying or sound condescending, nervous, or whiny, and is a great starting point towards making corrections in the way we modulate our voice. Let's listen to one last attack pattern that requires a language technique. Once handled, we will move into the last step of the Stay Calm method, the guide. The attack looks like this. A person who X, Y. The need to remain calm and detached from the outcome of this exchange is at an all-time high. This attack is designed to enable the attacker to single you out as that person who X and blame you for Y. Implicit in the attack is that something bad is going to occur if you don't change your behaviors. The beauty of this attack is that the attacker is able to remain in controller or analyst mode by not directly referring to you. The bait is so tempting, we instinctively jump for it and argue that we are not X and that we can handle Y. This is exactly what the attacker is planning on for your response. Here's a sample exchange, poorly handled. Manager: a person with serious emotional problems cannot possibly be expected to deal with the constant pressure and tension in this particular department. Rick: how dare you insinuate that I have serious emotional problems? I've been tolerating the stress and tension of this department for 6 months without as much as a vacation. You have the nerve to tell me I've got emotional problems? I'll tell you what I've got a problem with. It's your management style. If you've seen the movie Office Space, you'll be reminded of the engineer that screams, "Damn it, I've got people skills, don't you idiots understand that?" at the two consultants that are trying to figure out what exactly this engineer does. Don't take the bait. This is easy to deal with. It is not necessary to make any attempt to communicate meaningfully with someone who is hiding behind this type of attack. Call them out from behind their pretense and get them to say what they actually mean to say. Then you can blend. For now, try a response that goes like so. Manager: a person with serious emotional problems cannot possibly be expected to deal with the constant pressure and tension in this particular department. Rick: I couldn't agree with you more. The problem is, of course, deciding how a situation of this kind should be dealt with. A note: the person who speaks first after this statement will lose the right to guide. Rick should keep quiet no matter how pregnant the pause on the part of manager. Manager, fishing after 12 awkward seconds. Well, Rick, what do you think ought to be the first step? Rick: problems of this type are outside my expertise. I'd probably suggest bringing in an outside expert if none can be found on our staff. Rick deftly sidesteps any assumption that the attack was actually aimed at him. He has called manager's bluff and forced manager to either come out from behind the facade and speak about the real issue, or let Rick get back to work while manager tries to figure out what just happened. If this manager chooses to discuss his or her actual concerns, even from a different attack mode, then blending, neutralizing, and guiding will become possible for Rick. Reflecting on the blend step. Use Tenkan as an anchor to remind you to turn and try honestly to see things from the other person's point of view. Prove that you are attempting to understand your attacker by making a guess at what they are feeling and what needs they are trying to have met. You will know you have blended and achieved a state of neutrality when your attacker agrees with or makes adjustments to your assessment of their feelings and needs. Become familiar with the list of feelings to build a language of compassion. This will help you deal with the stress of a verbal attack by enabling you to search in the body language, vocal intonations, facial expressions, and the presuppositions of your attacker for the real intent of their attack. Often, the intent of an attacker is to get you to change behaviors because they are not able to accept the way you are currently behaving. This is often driven by the fact that your behavior is one that the attacker would not be able to accept in themselves if they were to behave in that manner. This is called projection and is a common catalyst for verbal attack patterns. Knowing this makes it easier to blend and achieve neutrality with attackers. Critical. Learn to modulate your voice by recording it and listening objectively. This is often a blind spot for people who are frequently attacked and cannot pinpoint a reason for the attacks.